What's up, everybody, and welcome back. Today's, I guess we'll call it episode, because this is sort of like almost like a guinea pig experience, or experiment, I should say, because doing a little bit of a 180 with things that I traditionally don't do, which is talking about rumored cast discussion for an upcoming All-Stars 5, but also doing, I don't even, you'd call this a game? I guess we can call it a game, right?
Sure.
Sort of like, a little bit of a retrospective in a sense, talking about the ruins, and we'll explain sort of, an overview of what we're talking about. But joining me today, if you follow on Challenge Twitter at all, or have seen his blog throughout the years, his blog is called Stop Being Polite. I'm sure you've seen it. And then he's on Twitter giving his thoughts and opinions as MTV's challenges. And he also has this pretty cool name, might I add. Mike, what's up?
Hey, not too much. Thank you for having me after all these years. I've just been sitting around waiting for people to invite me onto things, and a decade later, here I am.
well, listen, this actually happens to be the second time I've seen your face on a screen, because the other time would have been on Vendettas. So
yeah, I had a cameo in front of 40,000 people who watched the Vendettas after show, but I was on there, which means I got more screen time than Eddie on that season. So that's something. Has to count for something.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to kind of tip your cap to. But could you kind of give an overview before we dive into the meat and potatoes, sort of about your indoctrination into the challenge? Like, when did you kind of fall into it, and when did you start covering it?
Yeah, so I just kind of started writing a blog in 2012, the very beginning of 2012. I actually think it was a New Year's resolution, and I started covering Battle of the X's 1. So those recaps are still live. They're probably god-awful. But I just kind of stuck with it because I really like writing, and I really like being invested in the challenge. During that time, a lot of the websites that were giving spoilers and speculation were kind of like migrating to Twitter. So it was a lot of different... a lot of movement in the challenge community, and I just kind of wanted a place that I knew would be my own and wouldn't go away. And over a decade later, here we are. It's still here, still happening. So I've had a lot of faith in the show, just sticking around for years and years, and it hasn't proven me wrong yet.
Yeah, so you've basically now seen it almost grow from every which stage, from basically purely a reality show to reality and competition. So now we're seeing, I think it's fair to assume that more competition rather than reality at the moment. Mm-hmm. When you gravitated towards the show, I mean, I would have to presume that, that initial hook at least had to have been with the personalities.
Yeah, so the first season I ever watched live was Battle of the Sexes 1. And mm-hmm. The reason this is actually wild that I was watching MTV at the time was because I liked music. And they actually used to play music, but when they weren't playing music, they had a lot of reality shows. And the thing that hooked me onto the show, I remember the specific episode in person. I was waiting for whatever music videos to come on, and I see this girl, and she's like, "Puck has a machete." And it was Ayana. And Ayana Mackins is the person who got me into the show because she was so overzealous about Puck wielding a knife. So the rest is history. I just never stopped watching.
That must have been really trippy then to see her on All Stars too.
Yeah, that's what I loved about All Stars was those random returns that no one saw coming. This season, having Kifla on it, he's one of the few people I don't know too well. I saw his first season, but I mean, he was great, and he just brought a burst of life and energy to the show that you don't see on the main season. And it would be a shame if All Stars lost that.
Yeah, I mean, I could honestly say the same. I mean, I technically did interview him a couple years ago, so I met him, but when it came to my watching experience of him, I had to obviously gain knowledge on my own as to who he was. I didn't have that almost stored in my brain. So I did have kind of like a bit of like a background on him prior to this. But like you said, I mean, I would argue that this current season that's airing right now, All Stars 4, probably, at least on paper wise, had. I mean, I remember Departure because it's funny. It was a running joke because they aired the season like a full year and change after they actually filmed it. But I remember vividly on Departure Day of early 23. Some of the names like were just kind of out of nowhere. It almost felt like, but for me, I enjoyed that because it was super fresh. Like, we obviously had your Rachels and your Cars, your Laurels. Those are like the the meat and potato cast members. But then you also had like these Kefla, Adam Larson, Jay, Avery. Like these were like kind of seemingly out of nowhere obscure cast members for a long time.
Yeah, I was really happy with the cast that we got because it was a little bit of a deep cut in a lot of the areas. I mean, Adam, I feel like is someone who probably should have been on an earlier season. Granted, I'm sure he had life going on and has his reasons, and that's fine. But I would think that he would have been invited. But a lot of these people just came out of the blue. But what I do like about this season is like the girl side is stacked.
Oh.
I don't think that like we've ever seen such like a competitive girl side, and if we did, it might have been like Cutthroat, where the girls were really strong but didn't have the status that someone like Cara Maria or Laurel has now. It was just kind of like they got lucky and got these really great competitors early on.
They were all babies back then, essentially. All the best. Yeah, Emily, Laurel, Cara, Camilla, even. I mean, they were all on like their first or second season. Like they would go on to be great, but at that time, they were relative unknowns in the challenge world. So,
yeah, but the men's side, when it was first released, I was like, oh, well, you spent all of your budget trying to get the girls on the cast. I mean, that's what it looks like. But what I actually appreciate about it now that I'm watching it is that because there's only one winner, it actually feels like this random collection of male competitors is competitive with the female side, because you have like these elite females, and then I think
like middle of the road sort of. Yeah,
or people who have something to prove. Right. Like it's not like we have West coming in here and CT. Like these are people that have everything to prove and nothing to lose. And I feel like they kind of match evenly with this elite female cast, if that makes sense. So from a competitive side, I think it actually works pretty well.
No, I really enjoyed it. I even went as far as to say that like on paper it was, for me, like like when I say fresh, I mean just like in terms of it pops out from just like a refreshing standpoint, not necessarily the most stacked cast, but I call it the most fresh cast in challenge history, because you had sort of just honestly, I mean, even with Rachel, Veronica, and Tina, we hadn't seen them on screen collectively, all three of them together, since what was that, Inferno 2? I want to say, yeah. And then like we're getting Cara and Laurel together, which is always a thing. I'm probably forgetting something else, but no, we were getting a lot of like relation. Oh, I mean, Ayana and Veronica was another one. We obviously just didn't tell us about it. You wouldn't know that, but that was something I was looking forward to. So yeah, you had a lot of things that we hadn't seen on screen together, people for a while, and just people we hadn't seen in general. So I thought it was a refreshing cast. So that was kind of like where my head was at. But transitioning now into sort of All Stars 5 now. We do have, a rumored cast, and, spoiler credits go out to GamerVev on Twitter and Pink Rose on Vevmo for any of the names.
I will say, I always appreciate them. I don't know how they do what they do, but they do it well, and they give me something to talk about. And, I appreciate the fact that they're out there spoiling the show and making it fun for people when things aren't airing.
Personally, I think that's honestly, I do enjoy the shows, but I feel like the speculative nature that comes before the shows is honestly kind of overtaken. Because like I don't know, I enjoy that a lot more. I feel like right now, I think you and I kind of have like the same like almost mindset or viewpoint. Like we're very into like the speculatory and like the revisionist history, what ifs, and like all like the what could have beens. Like that's stuff that fascinates me the most. That's why like we oftentimes talk about like Battle of the Seasons 2012 and like what could have been there all the time, especially with Team Sydney. Like those Easter eggs get me like so like, all the time, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point down the road. But yeah, no, I mean, I'll list off the cast first before we dive into specifics, just so people kind of get a visual of what we're talking about here. So we don't know for sure if this is the finalized cast. There's likely going to be more names listed, but as of right now, the alleged All-Star 5 cast is from the female side. We've got Big T, Amber, Nani, Anissa, Janae, Kellyanne, Veronica, Melissa, Katie, Beth, Nicole Zanata, Sylvia, Ashley K, Sam from Real World San Diego, and then the two big ones, we've got Davon and Ashley Mitchell, Millionaire Mitchell, coming back. And a really big one that unfortunately was originally slated to be on that ultimately turned out to be sort of a Bigfoot sighting was Jen Grijalva from Real World Denver, which unfortunately that was the one. Don't get me wrong, Davon and Ashley Mitchell being on, like that one, those are two really exciting ones. But for me, I think the name that excited me possibly the most was Jen out of everybody. And that's
Jen just hasn't been on the scene for a long time. And like, Davon, I'm watching her on the go on Amazon right now. So like, even if she wasn't on this cast, I love her, but I could get my fill somewhere. Ashley, we saw, Ashley is definitely welcome on the cast. I mean, Ashley is one of my favorites. She saved my life. She's amazing. She's great. But, we saw her 2 or 3 years ago. So Jen was just kind of like out of left field. And she was the one person when the cast was initially revealed, from my perspective, that could have been on any single All-Stars. Like she would have been eligible for All-Stars 1. And hasn't done it yet. Whereas someone even like Frank, spoiler because he's believed to be on the cast. Someone like Frank probably wouldn't have been on All Stars 1 because they cut it off with Jemmy in terms of recency and debuting on The Real World.
Right. Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, I don't know, like whether or not this was just like something that sparked from nothing, or if there was legitimate like talks, or honestly even like cast and it just kind of fell out of fruition. But hopefully this means that the doors may be open. I mean, if they come back with like maybe a 6th season, like I hope that door is maybe open. We've seen some weird spoilers though throughout the years where like nobody like Landon on Final Reckoning was like a huge rumor and like he had no clue like what they were even talking about. So like I hope it's not one of those situations where like this just sparked from nothing. But I would venture to assume that Jen was at least in talks for us to have this like sort of discussion.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some fire behind this smoke. I don't think it's just a random thought that she could have been on the cast. But what do I know? I am miles and miles away from all of this. I have nothing to do with it.
Right. Well, before we get into like specific topics with the cast, I'll just run down the guys really quick, just so we knock that out. So for the guys, we've got Corey Lay, Fessy, CT, Leroy, Devin, Steve, Adam Larson, Frank, and then the biggest return of them all, which is Dario Medrano. That just goes without saying. And then Shane's not that bad either. So there you've got some pretty exciting names right there off the bat. Honestly, Frank and Shane do jump out too. They were probably like my 2 and 3 in terms of like excitement levels. Obviously, I think Frank, his challenge story was so unwritten. The way he went out on free agents, like that was just such an open-ended sort of chapter that we never got to revisit. So the fact that he's finally back is definitely a breath of fresh air for sure. I wonder what Frank we're going to get, because we know he's a married man these days, and he's obviously got a career now. So I'd venture to say we're not going to be getting the same Frank that we got, on Rivals 2 and Battle of the Seasons from like a drama perspective.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like competition will or could bring that out of him. So I'm not ruling out a Frank.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're probably kind of gonna get the Frank that we should have seen throughout free agents, which is, on the field in the game, he's going to be making moves, and he'll probably get frustrated when people are going against him, and we'll see that type of outburst. But I think on free agents, he was a little bit more level-headed. I mean, what do I really know? I wasn't there again, but from the edit, from what we saw, he was friendly with Dustin when they left, and he was kind of cool with most of the people in the house, even though they had prior issues. So I think on a personal level, we're not going to see him doing those deep cuts that kind of sting beyond the game. But I do think there's potential for him to kind of lose his cool when the game doesn't go as he planned, and I hope that's the case because I love a little drama.
Oh, yeah.
And I think having Shane on the cast is great. And one thing that I'm really interested to see, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but then there's a part of me that kind of hopes it does come to this, because he's someone who's really invested, and he's good friends with Veronica. But now he's on the show with Ashley and Sylvia and people that he kind of, when he returned to the show, started a new friendship with. And, there's potential for him to have to choose between the two friendships. And that would be really hard. And
it'd be compelling,
really dramatic. Because, we've never seen the overlap on the Shane Venn diagram between Veronica's crew and Ashley's crew. So we'll see. We'll see if it happens.
because we could have ended up seeing it on Vendettas and Final Reckoning, but I'm pretty sure Veronica and Shane both left on the same elimination, and Sylvia got sick, and I don't think we even had Ashley or Amanda on Vendettas. And then Final Reckoning, Veronica just went straight to the redemption pretty early on, so that was just a crapshoot pretty much. One thing that I have noticed, this seems to be a recurring pattern because we've saw it kind of with All-Stars 3. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's any glaring other examples on the previous All-Stars. But it seems to me that it's been done by kind of design where people who have exited the show and maybe burned bridges or in a controversial way, All-Stars is kind of that gap to be the bridge of the gap to kind of ingratiate these people back into the franchise. We saw it with Jordan and Naya on All-Stars 3. That's the most glaring example. And then now, Shane and Ashley come to mind with this. They both kind of exited for kind of two different reasons. The Ashley thing, we don't really know the full extent of it. It's only been he said, she said type of thing. And then Shane, obviously, from what we know, had a falling out with production years back, and that's kind of honestly why he's been off the show. So this kind of does feel like All-Stars is sort of the way to ingratiate people back into the show.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at that. Especially someone like Shane, what did he do? Get mad at a producer? In terms of the general public and perception of the show, he's exactly who we expect him to be. He's very outspoken. He will call out any type of injustice as he sees it. And if he's wrong, he's wrong. If he's right, which he is, if he's right, he's right. And he's not going to hold his tongue. So I mean, the only other person that kind of went out in a negative way on the main series that came back through All Stars would have been Trishelle. But
yeah, that was the other one too.
She left in like a different type of bad way. She just wanted to leave the show because it wasn't the right time, or she didn't want to be on Rivals, whatever it might be. I mean, she came back and did The Traitors too, which was a great showing for her. She got the money that she deserves, so good on her. But I do think that you are spot on there, that certain people are able to kind of make a return through All Stars and kind of test the waters again. And unless they've done something egregiously bad, I am excited for that.
We need Dustin back.
Oh, yeah.
This would have been the time, I feel like, to pull the trigger. Like, that would have, oh, man. We had Frank here. Like, I mean, we probably
still early. Who knows? Maybe they call him up and
listen, there's still plenty of guys missing right now, but if you could get Dustin back on a season that not only has Frank, but Leroy and Nani both there too, I mean, oh my God. You talk about getting the band back together.
I know. It's what we should have had in 2015, but...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, so we can now talk about kind of like, honestly, what I feel like's been, outside of the big returns, obviously, probably the biggest focal point, even before the names got revealed, is that we had kind of been building up and hearing rumblings about how they were going to start pulling essentially like non-MTV people onto All-Stars. I mean, we already kind of saw like the whole OG thing sort of be put away on All-Stars 3 in a certain sense when they got like Wes, Jordan, and them. But I mean, at the end of the day, at the root of it all, they were still real worlders. So we didn't really fight it as much. But then, obviously, as we saw in All-Stars 4, Cam, Are You the One? But, she's attached to Leroy, so we don't really, and we like Cam. So she's good for the show. So, I mean, it's not like any skin off our back. But then this is going to be probably the most glaring time where we do see a shift and like things do start to kind of look a little bit different now, with some flagship people, not just flagship, but some CBS people, Big Brother people. I mean, or if you're Corey Lay, you're from a Christmas dating show. But from your perspective, now that you've seen the names out in front of you, what is like your initial kind of interpretation now that you kind of can see who the names are?
Well, my first interpretation is I saw like the Fessy, the Amber, the
Corey Lay,
Melissa, Big T. I'm like, oh, well, you're not on season 40. This is your consolation prize. And whether or not that's true, that's the first thing I saw. So I have, eventually it was going to happen, especially because this show, All Stars, is not on MTV. It's on Paramount Plus. So they're going to inevitably invest in people like Fessy and Amber and Davon. And, this is what I always say. I'm not mad at any of the people. Like, I like Corey Lay. I like Big T. Like, you get the opportunity, take it. Like, I can't be mad at that. But eventually, the people who are in the Paramount world are going to get integrated into this show. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew it was going to come. Yeah. That said, do I support it? No. Like, I want the old school people to be there. I think what's really made All Stars special for long-term fans is it kind of brought back this element that we hadn't seen in a long time on the challenge. But like, if you're a really old school fan and like you watch shows like The Gauntlet, The Inferno, Battle of the Sexes 2, even The Gauntlet 2, a lot of the times coming into the show, it would almost be like a reunion. And right. You'd have people that hadn't seen each other in like 5 years kind of getting back together in the house. And you see that on All Stars 1 when you have like people like Hisela coming back that hadn't done the show in so long, but she recognizes these faces, and now she's going to be friends with Jemmy and Nehemiah. And it was just really cool to see people like continue storylines and start new ones. And now it just seems like what we got on the main series is just going to be picked right back up on All Stars. So that part of it, I'm kind of not so happy about.
Yeah, I'm like a bit of a mixed bag here and a double-edged sword, because I am definitely in the camp with you about, do I support them getting, outside the bubble of what this show initially stemmed from? No. But I definitely feel like they have a nice ratio, at least, to where it's not overbearing. It's like, what, 5 or so, maybe 5, 6 names at most. So, like, at least you've got more of, like, the MTV, like, crowd, so to speak. But on the same token, the names that they did pull, I feel like, for the most part, they got it right. If you were to pull guys from like, for instance, I don't know, let's just say that they went and they got, like, trying to think of, like, the most, like, outrageous, like, name that's been on the flagship in recent years that they could have just pulled for this. Yes, thank you. I mean, Jude, you just hit it right on the head. If they would have got, like, Burna on this, that would have, like, been, and with all due respect, I have nothing against her as an individual. I'm just saying, like, objectifying a person watching them as a TV character, she would have felt out of place on this, I feel. You do lose that sort of reunion sort of element that you just talked about, and there will be sort of, like, some kind of, like, element to it. Like, I mean, the Lavender Ladies aren't, like, OGs per se, but we're going to be getting sort of like, hey, good to see you, sort of, it's been a while.
We're missing Amanda, though. So if somehow Amanda sees this, next time, pick up that phone. We want you
I
don't know what Shane and Ashley.
I don't know how you have a miscue like that. I mean, maybe... Listen, I mean, more power to them if Ashley and Shane are really trying to keep this under wraps, where, like, they wanted it to be a surprise. But man, I mean, if that probably should have been negotiated or talked about a little bit more, because we probably saw Amanda on this as well. Which, I mean, that probably would have given us a certain pairing if she was on with Fessy, I would assume.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That could very well be the case, and would that have been the worst thing?
Without getting too far ahead, because I did have some other things to talk about before we fully dive into that. That would have been Amanda and Fessy. Actually, probably would have been kind of like a modern day Final Reckoning Zach Amanda pairing, where they probably realistically should have and would have won that season had they not stepped off that platform. So this would have been kind of like a good shot for Amanda to win, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and Fessy's very well. I don't know about this season, but, like, on the main series, he's very protected. People don't want to send him in for some reason. Once it's a hall brawl, he always gets a hall brawl. But now there's puzzles, so he can't even do well in hall brawl necessarily. So I don't know if you saw USA too, but he had to run through the hall and I don't know, look at a triangle, which was hard for him. But Amanda, she'd be great at that. So they'd be like yin and yang. That could have been a good pair.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I do love that based on this cast, and honestly, this is just my interpretation. Despite the All-Stars now dipping their toes into some CBS and some outside people. Well, actually, before I say what I was about to say, I'll say that because I watched, like, probably the first half of 39, and Melissa was, like, the person that I liked the most. And I even, like, was just doing, like, a binge watch of, like, the trilogy era, like, 2 weeks ago. Melissa's, like, what was that, like, 5-episode run on Vendettas is, like, right up there with Wes's on the Ruins of, like, memorable, like, just outrageous, short, but, like, quality to the point run of just, like, you were there for a good time, but not a long time. Like
Yeah.
she had a really great Vendettas run. If you're just simply like in a vacuum looking at like quality over quantity. So I have no issue with Melissa being there. I mean, Big T too. She's always involved in storylines, so she'll be a fit. Amber's an interesting one because she's kind of like a little on the fence when it comes. She's a polarizing one with the fandom. I think a lot of people like her as like, a person, but then there's also a lot of fans that view her as boring. That's subjective, but like, I'm interested.
I think that she's interesting on the main series because she's like the one person from the Big Brother alliance that for some reason they just don't like, which never really clicked to me. But I mean, she's the challenge champion, so she gets to laugh at the end of the day. I guess Casey's a challenge champion too, but she's the second Big Brother champion. Amber will always be the first, no matter what they do. Amber will be the first Big Brother champion.
That's in the record book, so.
Yeah, you can't change history.
But yeah, we do have like, so what I was about to say before is like, just basically, I mean, looking at this cast, especially from the girl side, I think they put together a storyline, entertainment-driven female cast for the first time in I feel like a while. Because I think we're used to seeing them kind of gear their casts in general sort of around like competition. Even with like All Stars 4, you've got like, yeah, we're getting some stories, but I think like, if you were to ask fans like, oh, who do you view them more as? Like people would say like, Nicole, Laurel, Cara, Rachel. They see them as like competition first, drama second. Whereas like if you look at this female cast, I mean, if you go down that list, I think you would more so say that you view them from like what they offer and provide from an entertainment standpoint. Am I wrong?
I mean, I knew the second that Dario got released, this cast was going to be entertaining. So, but I mean, I like Dario, but all joking aside, like I think you're right. I think that this cast is very entertainment focused. Like, it would be such a misfire if you get people like Ashley and Davon. And we have Veronica and Shane again, and you don't make this show what reality TV is meant to be, and that's a little bit competitive, but like also kind of wild and kind of trashy and kind of fun, and we want that. I mean, no one is watching no one was watching Rivals 2 because they wanted strict competition. They wanted to see the relationships unfold. I mean, it's part of the history of the show, and there are people who rightfully so want to see that entertainment level.
I have high hopes for this cast personally. I really do. Just based on what we've gotten so far. And from what it seems like, we're probably going to be getting, at least on the guys' side, some more names in the coming days. But since, you just mentioned the word Rivals too, the big thing floating around right now, it's been kind of Bigfoot in the fandom for years. Everyone's like, oh, I think this is going to be a Rivals. When's Rivals coming back? Rivals is always like the same way fans, when we're discussing eliminations, always refer back to Hall Brawl.
Yeah.
Rivals is kind of like the Hall Brawl of like challenge formats where like people like that's the one they turn to. And as cliche as it is to say, I'm an advocate for Rivals coming back, and based on what we're hearing, I mean, from pretty credible sources right now, such as Gamer themselves, pretty much openly saying that like it's like pretty much 85-90% going to be Rivals of some kind of variation for this. So based on you just hearing that, I mean, me personally, I actually do think that this is a welcomed sort of, if they are going this route, I think it's welcomed because I think that the first 4 All-Stars, while they had formats, I think in essence, it kind of just felt like a free agents type of format to an extent. Whereas like now I feel like them incorporating an old theme, you get a little bit flexible because now you can't just have the old strategy of just gang up on one person the whole time and just like save your friends to the end. You're going to have friends mixed in with like people they don't like and they're going to have to kind of like worry about themselves in this season. It's going to actually force people to actually have to make like genuine like power moves and stuff. So I personally am all for this decision if this is the route that they're taking. What say you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the first two rival seasons were good, and undoubtedly they brought a lot of hype to the challenge world. I mean, I know that Rivals won in terms of viewership, did like crazy numbers toward the end, so there's clearly something there. I think that the format, when you do same-sex rival pairs, always kind of leaves something to be desired. So I'm hoping that what we get, if it is in fact Rivals, is something that really isn't, or is more co-ed, almost like Rivals 3. I think Rivals 3, the cast was a little bit too fresh for people. But if the crop of people we have now for All Stars 5 is actually going to make a Rivals cast of some sort, I think it'll be really good. I think you have enough like legitimate beefs there that if you pair everyone correctly, there will be a lot of hype behind it. There will be a lot of drama with it, and exactly what you said, a lot of people are going to have to compromise with some of their alliances coming in because they're protecting someone that they are not friends with necessarily. And that always makes the show interesting.
Yeah, I mean, based on the rumors, I mean, we're kind of headed towards what seems like a little bit of a final reckoning type of rivals, where it's like you might get a girl or guy girl. It doesn't seem like we're getting too many guy pairs. I think sort of like what they saw in Final Reckoning. The problem what they ran into with that is when like you run the risk of when you have like an elimination with a guy versus a girl. You have to have like these equalizers. Sometimes they were like ridiculous, like where like that first elimination where Paulie like had to retrieve the puzzle pieces when he was like in that sort of like what I'm talking about, where they lost to Cameron Bailey.
And they like, I guess what they did was they doubled up the bands for Paulie because they were like, oh, the man can pull more weight, and just their equalizer didn't equalize anything. It kind of penalized some people more than others, and that's a whole nother conversation. But you're right. I think that they really haven't found a way to have a lot of eliminations or even challenges that are welcoming to like a co-ed format, and that's why we see so many puzzles, because anyone can do a puzzle. I mean, not most of the people on the show can't do a puzzle, but that's just them. That's the only reason why they don't want to learn how to do puzzles.
Yeah, I mean, if they are going this route, I mean, there's, I kind of want to dive into the potential pairings right now of what we think could potentially happen or what we would want to have happen. I mean, if you look down this list, there's obviously several options for some people. At the top of my wish list, if I had the pen and I was just putting these people together, I would, well, partially because I'm biased here. I mean, I tweeted it a couple weeks ago, like unknowingly, like I had no clue that Kellyanne or Sylvia were even going to be on the cast. I told people like down below, like if they were to ever bring back Rivals, like tweet a pairing that you would want. And then I started by saying Kellyanne and Sylvia. I recently rewatched All Stars 3, and I saw that dynamic, and it was just like, it was so petty but so good. Like, there just seemed like genuine disdain there. Like, their just personalities did not mesh, but I think that would be like awesome TV if they were paired together. And I know they might have some other options, but I feel like I think like them two together I would do, because that's like sort of like a fresh like Sylvia. If you look at her potential options, her other option would be like Nicole, right? And like while they did have issues with each other, that's farther back and that was game related. Whereas I feel like Kellyanne and Sylvia just like by the end of All Stars 3 just really didn't like each other as people, like, or they just couldn't stand being around each other. So that's one that I would have. What do you think about that potential?
I think that there is a lot of potential there, and you're definitely going to see a few pairings that stem from the previous All-Star seasons.
Yeah.
So that is one that, assuming it's more Final Reckoning than Rivals 3 in the sense that we do have co-ed pairs, I think that Sylvia and Kellyanne are a strong potential to be together. Kind of, I don't want to say it sucks because I do think that Sylvia is good at the game, but Kellyanne is like one of the people that I really think, despite having never won, has potential to win. There's a lot of people that are kind of almost lost causes at this point. Kellyanne, in my eyes, is not one of those people, and I want her to get a good shake at winning. And I feel like anyone who's on a female team, based on prior history and prior seasons, won't get like the best odds of winning.
Right.
Who knows? But I do think in terms of pairing people up, that's a good one, and that's a strong potential.
Well, we might as well get this one out of the way because it's, I mean, if you just look at both of these two people, I mean, it's like a foregone conclusion that this is going to be the pairing. We're going to get Dario and Ashley Kay. And the reason why I find this fascinating, and, you know, me and you are Dario apologists, but, like, I think all jokes aside, if we put on our objective caps for a second here, we could probably sympathize with anybody who thought Dario was wallpaper on his final 2 seasons. But, like, from an objective standpoint, though, leaving our biases out of this, they, in a world in which breakups and, like, just personal lives always find a way to blend itself over into the public perception, that's a breakup that, like, just flew right under everybody's nose. You know what I mean? Like, we as people, like, we just honestly found out on our own that they broke up. Neither one of them addressed it publicly. They just take down the pictures with each other, and then we see them with different people. So that's interesting. And what's interesting about it is Ashley's, like, actually, I'm pretty sure, engaged with a kid, and Dario's now single. So that's going to be like that's going to be a weird sort of dynamic. But I'm more so interested to see if they explore sort of what happened between them.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is a storyline that has a lot of loose ends from a viewer's perspective. But, I mean, I would be interested in seeing it. I mean, I think that team, I'm going to root for Dario regardless. It makes no sense. No one necessarily thinks that these two are going to make it to the end. But I'm going to root for them regardless because, honestly, I just kind of like them both.
Yeah.
I mean, you say we're a Dario apologist. I remember I used to, like, tweet at Dario and stuff, and he always laughed back. He's here to have a good time. He's fun. Ashley kind of has something to prove. She went out early on Invasion, which was really heart-wrenching because it stopped that relationship from unfolding on screen. So it could be interesting. It could also, maybe it was just like a really amicable split and it's going to be boring and no one wants to, they're not going to get a lot of screen time. And still, I'll root for them. But
I'm calling it now. I mean, I'm just throwing my shot out there. I think Dario and Melissa are going to have a showmance. I don't know. I just feel like it's happening. I just, like, Melissa always seems to have kind of a showmance on, pretty much every time. Well, I mean, Final Reckoning, she was there for a cup of coffee, but, like, every other time she's actually been on a season, she's had, like, some type of showmance. I don't know. That's one I see happening. So,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be mad at it. It could happen. I mean, Melissa knows that she's here for a reality show. She's not going to stay around and wait for the world to happen. She's going to bring her world to the show, and that's how she always is. So, I think she'll be an interesting pair, and not to jump the gun, but I think if we're looking at the most likely scenario, she'll probably be with Corey. So.
And I love that pairing. Love it. Because Corey was my number one guy in terms of, like, I watched the show at 39, and I was like, I came away from it feeling like Honestly, I think Corey's the guy that or at least, I mean, this is just, I mean, maybe yours is different because, I mean, I kind of stopped watching midway, but like, I watched 39 and I came from it thinking like, Corey's like the guy that I enjoyed watching the most because he competed, he made actual moves, and he was just like involved in just messy drama. So I was like, honestly, he was kind of like my number one enjoyment for guys on 39 that I watched. And then Melissa was like just far and away my number one female. So putting them together, Corey's a solid competitor. He just ran and made a final. Melissa has previously made a final, and she's honestly been kind of, in my opinion, underrated as a competitor and what she offers physically. I think they're a sleeper pair together, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of potential for them to be a sleeper pair, for them to do well. I worry that this could be the season where people kind of turn on Melissa, because I think a lot of people like her because she is reminiscent of older seasons, in the sense, kind of like what I said, she knows she's on a reality show. She's not going to bite her tongue. She's going to be fun. But if she is going against the old school people that we're rooting for, people are going to be like, enough of you, Melissa. We're no longer rooting for you. So I see a lot of potential for that if she's targeting like the Veronicas and the Davons of the world. But I do think, regardless, she'll be entertaining. I think you had two good assessments early on 39 that Melissa was entertaining, and then you stopped watching after she left. Both of those were pretty good choices.
I'm glad, because I'm now kind of rectified here. But what about you? So I just talked about her and Dario potentially having a showmance. What about her and Nicole?
I mean, that was a thing.
I mean, Nicole allegedly has a girlfriend, but that's having a girlfriend is as good as saying that I walked my dog this morning.
Yeah, I mean, when has that ever stopped her before? They had a thing on Vendettas. They played cheerleader for a while, and I don't know, maybe sparks could fly again.
Right. I mean, we'll see. Since we're on the topic of Melissa, Big T, I think that she's going to be with CT, because I think the last time we saw them sort of have their partnership on Double Agents, it kind of ended off with CT dropping her in a, sort of way that could be deemed a little, hurtful towards Big T, and we saw her kind of be emotional about that. So I think pairing them back up together, now having CT pretty much like, hey, this isn't Double Agents. You can't just drop her for a new partner. You're with her the entire time. You got to embrace this now. And then Big T having to try to trust him again. And, I mean, not for nothing, too. I mean, I'm all for, I mean, they had that, like, practicing of hall brawl in the hallway that they did. Like, it's not that they didn't have good, funny, cheeky moments together. So I'm all for the cheesiness, if that's the route they want to go in. So that seems to me, at least, sort of where I think they're going to go. Because, I mean, if you look down the rest of the cast, I mean, they're not going to put Fessy and CT together. And, like, if you look at the rest of the girls, I mean, that's pretty much the only one that makes sense for CT is Big T.
Yeah, unless they want to revisit CT and Veronica. I think a lot of people would be up in arms about that. But
I hope they don't go that route, personally. But then that, we might as well talk about it since we're talking about her now. If you did go that route, then you would kind of leave Leroy with nobody else. Right. I mean, obviously Leroy and Veronica's rivalry is kind of like now a little more water under the bridge. But I mean, for the sake of making the format work, I think, bringing up the Dirty 30 thing, which I felt if Leroy actually was on Dirty, if Leroy did Final Reckoning, I feel like that's what we would have probably gotten, was them two together.
Yeah. I think that probably would have been the case. The thing is, not a lot of people dislike Leroy. I think he's one of the people that's very well liked. I mean, apparently Ty hates him, but there's no evidence of that. But they were paired on Rivals too. But that's kind of what you get with Leroy. You get a lot of these like pseudo fake rivalries, because most people, unless you're Camilla, don't really have any serious beef with him. So I think that they're going to have to stretch a little bit and probably put someone like Veronica with him. Granted, there are future episodes for All Stars 4 and season 40 that could maybe steer things in a different direction. Maybe, Leroy and Katie have some huge feud that we just don't know about. I doubt it, but you never know.
Well, I mean, to correct you, I mean, there actually is one person that's known on Earth that actually does despise Leroy a little bit worse than Ty does. You're not going to believe this, but it's actually Avery.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Just a little bit more than Ty does,
Yeah.
Because that's such a heated rivalry in its own right. But
yeah.
That's probably where we're headed for Leroy and Veronica. I mean, they're both, at least by this cast, at least seem, Beth's there, so you never know. But I'd say outside of her, I think most people like Veronica. They kind of view her as like a motherly figure, and everybody likes Leroy. So, yeah. Socially, I wonder where they will fall in the pecking order, but you'd have to assume they wouldn't at least be like the first or second target. So I think their like stance alone would probably get them to maybe like the midway point, and we'd have to see where they go from there. My only concern with that pairing, though, is like I feel like at this stage of their challenge careers, they're both in a position where I feel like they need like some pushing to kind of like get them up, but they're both more so like not pushers. They're like kind of both need to be like pushed. So two people that need to be pushed, I don't know how that's going to gel together.
Yeah. I mean, we just saw on episode 8, the trivia episode of All Stars 4.
They won.
They won together. So they could round each other out. I mean, Veronica, her strengths are that she's really crafty. She can navigate the game. She can save her ass when she needs to. Leroy probably can like move 500 pounds, and he's a lot of muscle. So maybe he can handle the strength, and Veronica can handle the smarts, and they'll make it far.
Well, I think this one's a little more. It's based on a real rivalry for sure, but it's a little more up in the air. This is what I would personally want. And I'm just looking at the cast list, and I'm like, I feel like this is staring me right in the face, and it'd be hard to pass up. I really hope they go Beth and John A.
Yeah, there's definitely real beef there. I mean, it could happen. John A is the only person as of now who this will be her 4th All-Star season.
Yep.
So maybe, she won her last 2 All-Star seasons. Maybe they're like, you're going to have to work a little bit more. And I'm not saying that Beth can't win. There are areas where she is strong, but we also have seen her not jump and not participate in things that are challenging for her. So you never know what you're going to get with Beth. Actually, that's a lie. You know that there's going to be some drama, but you never know competitively wise. But we will see. I think there's a lot of potential if there's other names revealed for them to have partners kind of.
Right. Yeah. Because if you just look at the names that we currently know, I mean, the only other person that could potentially work for John A is Kellyanne, maybe. But like, I don't really feel like I equate Kellyanne and John A as a stronger rivalry than I do Sylvia and Kellyanne. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I forgot about them. That
was like World Championships or something like that, where John A and Kellyanne. But yeah,
I mean that's not baseless. That's true.
Yeah. So that was a potential option. Another one that I feel like we're headed towards is Steve and Katie, would be based on All Stars 2, I would assume, right? Because
unless somehow Steve has drama with someone like Nicole Zanata on All Stars 4 that I don't know about, but we do know that as of now, Steve is Team Cara Maria, and Nicole from what I understand, doesn't like Cara Maria at all, ever. So you never know. But I think more likely it's going to be Steve and Katie based off of All Stars 2.
Did Adam Larson and Katie ever have any issues on like Road Rules or any earlier seasons by any chance?
I can't really remember. If anything, what comes to mind is when Katie was voted into her second gauntlet on the Gauntlet 1. Adam probably voted her in,
Right.
but I mean, it was a majority vote. So, and Veronica got the brunt of that. I mean, Katie and Veronica could be a pairing for all we know. I doubt it. They've like water under the bridge, but
I feel like they're gonna want to stray away from like, because even like you can point to Veronica and Beth, but like, I mean, I don't know how. Because the thing is like, if you do pair Veronica and Beth, you will get drama. But I feel like by not pairing them, you're still gonna get drama. Yeah. But you also get like the competitive investment by putting them with other people. Because like together, I just don't think that's at this stage of where they're both at. Like they're just at a
Veronica at her best and Beth at her best probably have somewhat similar skill sets in the sense that they're kind of like crafty and can kind of sway a vote or intimidate people in a sense. So I think if you put them together, it's not gonna. Neither are gonna complement each other. And with a pairing like that, it's just like throwing a stone in water. If you put them together, they're just gonna sink.
Right. Well, one pair that I really hope that we're getting, and like a lot of people are kind of speculating on it, is Shane and Davon. I mean, their Final Reckoning fight has just resurfaced recently, and I obviously binged it recently too. I would love nothing more than for that to be the pairing. Like, I really hope that's the case. You know, I think they both have other sort of like options, whereas like you could go the Shane and Nicole route. That exists, it does. But you also have the route of if they want to do Davon and potentially Ashley Mitchell, if they want to do that route. But I personally would rather see Shane and Davon together, and I think that would be an underrated team.
Yeah, I think they're going to be one of the teams almost like Shane and Nelson where they will get along. Like, I think that there are a lot of things that they can agree on, and they're both kind of unconventional players. Yeah. But they both kind of can. I think at the end of the day, they like each other enough that they can work together. But I think it would be really fun. You know, I'm huge Shane fan. The first season I ever watched, Battle of the Sexes, when he was on it, I hold, his return on Invasion was one of the best ones ever. So I'm rooting for him to win. I think that this could be his season to at least make a final. And if he took Davon to the end and won with her, all the better. So I'm rooting for it.
Yeah, we're down to the final couple of people yet. Some of which are a little more uncertain, but we'll get to like the more, I guess you could say, certain of the bunch, which is Frank's partner. He's got like two that you could make work, which is like obviously Nani being one, which I think from an emotional standpoint, I think many people would want to see. But it does feel likelier, I think, at least if this person's on the cast, that it's almost certain that she's going to be with Frank, because that's like her only like real, rival that would exist on this cast. And that would be Frank and Sam, because obviously when we last saw them together was, Frank kind of berating her up that hill, or up the desert hill in Battle of the Seasons. And that was always like been a big focal point. And I think like, similar to the point we talked about earlier with like Trishelle and Anissa, where they hashed out and talked about their Rivals 2 fight. I think production's probably hoping we could get on episode 1, Frank and Sam, that conversation happening on camera for us all to see, and them kind of revisiting that and having to work together, where it's like they may not win, but we'll see Frank painted in a more supportive light than he was back then. I feel like if Sam's actually on this cast, that's pretty much a formality that it's going to be her and Frank.
I would have to agree there because who else is Sam going to be there beyond?
If Marie somehow boards the plane, then maybe her.
Who?
Marie, if she somehow boarded the plane, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, well, you never know. I mean,
Yeah.
if Gamer was going to hide one name from us, it would be Marie.
Marie.
He would just, out of the blue, Marie pops out, and you never know. But maybe Zach will board the plane, and that could, that could be a pairing. But I think we're fated to see Sam and Frank, which it's one of those kind of weird ones where I totally see there is real beef. There's a real rivalry there. The rivalry stems from Sam's performance on Battle of the Season. So it's kind of like, really, we got Frank back after all these years to be paired with someone he doesn't like because she didn't perform well. So I'm like, it's kind of not the ideal situation for someone like myself who wants to see Frank back after 10 years away. But maybe Sam will surprise us. Maybe she's been doing a lot of cardio. What do I know?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody at heart would want Frank and Nani. And Nani, I mean, look, when Nani's got a partner that's good and supportive, she does well. I mean, her and Turbo are killing it. So, who knows? But I think it's fair to assume what we just said is likely the scenario at play here. And that kind of leaves us with a few names just kind of floating around. Of course, we don't have the full cast, presumably, yet. But you've got, like, Ashley, Mitchell, Nani, Anissa, Devin, kind of, and Adam Larson just kind of floating around where we don't really know where they fit. I mean, maybe they could stretch an Ashley and Nani pairing. I mean, like, that's maybe something that could exist. I'm sure there's better options that exist. I don't really know where Anissa fits, which is a little bit surprising considering.
The only, like, possible option that I could see is somehow they do, like, Devin and Amber as a pairing, and then Fessy and Anissa. Fessy would be devastated. I'd love it. I mean, Anissa was like chasing him for 2 straight seasons on Double Agents and Spies, Allies, and Allies, trying to be his partner. And Fessy was like, hell no. So, it could happen. And I mean, Anissa's run the final. She's done the show 16, 17 times. I don't think this season's going to be any different. Like, it would be the ultimate gag if Anissa did win. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like a Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, people have seen Bigfoot. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that they've seen Anissa win, but
yeah. I mean, some people have seen Bigfoot more than Anissa is likely to win. So
yeah,
that's the conclusion I've drawn here. All right, well, I mean, that's probably could put a bow on that, considering that's all we know for right now. I'm sure, like, once down the line, the official thing becomes certain. Like, once we know the pairings and everything, that's going to be an entirely different discussion.